Okay, welcome everyone to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for schools that are renewing their Gold Star status or their Ask a Ramp status. The topic of this month's webinar is Priority Goals Update. We do have schools that are participating in this webinar live, and I encourage you to just break in and ask questions as things maybe don't make sense or you would like me to further clarify something. And my name is Sue Reynolds, and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. Okay, we introduced Debbie Hall at our webinar last month, but just wanted to make everybody aware that we do now have a person that's handling tech support for RSC, Debbie Hall. And she has just been great at this work, has a background both in student guidance and in social personal areas, and a lot of experience in strategic planning with some of our other initiatives. So anytime you have questions about the process, about how to use the online system, about submissions or deadlines, please feel free to contact Debbie. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. We are going to, first of all, review how to submit work on a monthly basis for Debbie to look at. And then we'll do our monthly quick review of the RSC beliefs and process. And then we'll focus in on this month. And we'll be looking at priority goals and the submissions and rubrics and the online system. Okay, so first of all, the updates, and basically what we wanted to look at is the monthly submissions. So on the process page, there's a couple of things here that we'd like you to look at. The first one is the things that you will be submitting are in the Enter column. So the counselor time use logs, the updating the percentages in the coming month, the resource action plan, the priority goals update, and then the minutes of this meeting. So pretty much every month when you're wondering, okay, what do I need to submit, it would be all of the things that are in the, that have icons in the Enter column. Then the other thing that we want to make sure that you're thinking about is the quality of your work before you submit it. It's really just kind of a waste of your time and our time if you submit stuff before you've checked to make sure that it's aligned with the expectations of ASA and Gold Star and Ask a Ramp. So what we would suggest to you is that before you submit things, you check out the rubric items for those submissions. So if you just click that rubric, the icon that's in the rubric column, that will open up all of the rubric items for each of the submissions, and just go through and make sure that you've met all those rubric items. Those are the same items that Debbie's using when she reviews your work, so it just makes sense to do an in-house review before you submit it to us. And then finally, we've added a row in each of the month's activities that says send submissions email to Debbie, and there's her email address. If you click that icon in the that info icon in the tools column, that will give you instructions about how to submit the work each month. And basically the instructions look like this. It will say, send an email to Debbie when you're ready for something to be reviewed, and then you're going to put in the subject line RSC review. That's really important because that flags it to Debbie and lets her know that her clock has started to make sure she does that review within 48 hours. In the body of your email, you want to make sure that you've written your school's name so we know who we're doing the review for. And then the exact name of the submissions that you want us to review. So to get the exact names, you would just go back to the process page, and then you'd write whatever it says here. So counselor time use logs, counselor time use percentages, whatever you're ready for us to review. Okay, then you also need to be able to see our feedback after you submit. So here's how that will happen. As soon as you've submitted that first submission to us, start watching your email. And within 48 hours, Debbie will send you an email that has a link specific for your school that goes to your school's submission status page. And on that submission status page, you'll see each of the submissions, and then there will be a column that says that the submission meets criteria or it needs revision. And if it says that it needs revision, then please revise the work, and there will be comments there from Debbie that tells you exactly what to do. Please revise your work and then resend it to Debbie, same process as above. Make sure to read Debbie's comments. She'll if she asks you to revise something, she's going to tell you exactly what needs to be revised. So let's just take a look at a submission status page. This happens to be the page for Clinton Prairie Elementary School that's been submitting. So you can see that they have updated their RSC uses. They sent Debbie the email that said, we're ready for you to review that. Debbie sent them a link to this page, and then you can see that this meets criteria. Steering team roster, here is the criteria that has at least 2 members, that meets criteria. Advisory council roster, here's the things that we're looking for, and that meets criteria for them. So, and you can see in this case, Debbie put in a comment, you know, great job, good representation, thanks, and then her initials. So anytime this says revise, there will definitely be a comment out here that helps you understand what we would like you to do. And if anytime that's not clear, just call Debbie or send her an email and ask her to get in touch with you, or just talk with her when she picks up the phone and figure out exactly what we're looking for. So I think all of our rubrics items are very clear. It should be clear from the get-go, but if it's not, please make sure that you're asking us questions. Okay, let me just stop there for a minute and see those of you who are participating live if there's any questions about how to submit. One other thing that kind of reminds me that I forgot, there's a column here that has the deadlines for the work coming to us. So those of you who are kind of getting a late start, we've talked about how with renewal schools, if you are getting a late start, that's okay. It is possible to postpone the last couple of advisory council meetings into the second semester without really overburdening yourself. So I think that during second semester, so I think that will be fine. Basically, the work each month is due the last day of the month or the first day of the following month. So, okay. So I'm not hearing any questions, so let's just go into our review. So just real quickly, don't forget the RSC beliefs that our major belief is that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So school counseling is all about helping kids make good choices. This is kind of a schematic that says the same thing. We believe that when students are engaged in sound guidance and counseling programs, that they help kids make good choices, and that as a result of those choices, achievement will go up. And so when we're designing, or in this case redesigning our program this year, we're starting out, you've already started out by looking at your school's academic achievement goals in the school improvement plan. And then you said, okay, for kids to reach that level of achievement, what choices do they need to make? Do they need to enroll in certain courses? Do they need to ask for extra help? Do they need to do campus visits? What are the choices that kids make when they're successful at school? And then finally, we're now in the next few months going to redesign the school counseling program so that it helps kids make those sound choices. But the big thing is those sound choices, and today, of course, we're talking about the priority choices that we want all kids in the school to make. So today we're really focusing on 2, 3, 4 choices that we want every student in the building to make. Okay, so in terms of the process, we started out by getting ready. We've updated your steering team. We've looked at doing some self-studies. We've collected data. We've updated your advisory council membership. And then in August, we had the first meeting with your advisory council. We kind of reminded them of all the RSC terminology, and then we looked at your vision and decided if we needed to update your vision. So for some of you that are behind, this may be the meeting that the discussion you're going to have next is the first discussion. And just a reminder that the archived webinar for that discussion is in the process page. So when you're ready for that, if you can't remember what to do, just go to the archived webinar and that will help you. Some of you also that are behind, you're getting ready to have your second meeting with the advisory council. And that is to update your program goals. And then this month, we're actually doing two things in this month's advisory council meeting. The first one is we're going to expand your resources. And that's really important because we know that the more resources you have as a school counseling program, the more priority goals you can tackle. So we're going to expand resources first, especially time, because we know that is the resource that usually limits the school counseling program is time. So we're going to expand time, expand funding if we can, and then look at how many priority goals can we tackle, and then which ones should we tackle. So that's this month. Then we'll look at the root causes for those priority goals. We're trying to determine why aren't kids making those sound choices in those 2 or 3 priority goal areas. We'll look at guidance data to tell us, maybe kids don't have the knowledge that they need or the skills that they need to make a good choice. We'll look at counseling data to help us understand if maybe kids aren't making sound choices because they have social personal things getting in the way. And we'll also look at opportunity data. Maybe the problem is that we just haven't given the kids the opportunity to make the choices. So the adults need to do things differently, either give kids knowledge or help them overcome their personal social issues, or give them the opportunities to participate in programming where they would be asked to make choices. Okay, so once we know what's getting in the way, then we can start talking about how to fix it. If what's getting in the way is a lack of knowledge, then we'll tweak our guidance program. If what's getting in the way is personal social issues, then we'll tweak our counseling program. And if it's opportunities, then we'll tweak the opportunities that we give kids. So in December, we'll be looking at what activities are we going to put in place for next year. And then second semester is where we're going to be doing all the preparation. We're not meeting with our advisory council now. We're just doing the behind the scenes things that counselors have to do to make sure that the program is up and running. So we'll be writing guidance lessons. We'll put together a program calendar. We'll look at individual counselor calendars and then putting together an annual budget. And again, if you're behind a meeting or two, not a problem. We just want to make sure you don't get any farther behind. But it is possible. We've allowed an entire second semester to do this preparation step. But it is possible to do that preparation step in maybe half a semester. So if you do need to move some of your meetings into the second semester, that should be okay. Okay, let me stop and see if we have any questions again. Those of you who are participating live, we've been through this before, so I wouldn't anticipate a lot of questions, but okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. I'm not hearing any questions, so let's go on. Okay, so this month, we're prepping for the third meeting of your advisory council, and the topic this month is priority goals. So this month's discussion is focusing on those priority goals, and I just wanted to remind you that coming into this meeting, you have already defined your program goals. So you may have a large number of program goals, maybe 60 or 70 choices that successful students tend to make when they're in your building. So, you've kind of looked at if you're middle school, what choices do 6th graders make, 7th graders make, 8th graders make, and that's kind of a big list. Successful students tend to make a lot of good choices. And then today we're going to talk about coming up with a subset of choices that we're going to call the priority goals. This may be one one goal among all those program goals. It may be 2 or 3. What we want to make sure is that the number of priority goals does not exceed your capacity for being able to enable every student in your building to meet that goal. It's perfectly okay to have there be one priority goal if that's, within your capacity. But if you have the capacity time-wise and funding-wise to hit, 3 or 4 goals or maybe even more, that would be okay. So, okay. So remember that the priority goals are the things that you're going to implement extra activities next year to address those goals. And then also you're going to monitor data for the priority goals to evaluate the impact of your activities. So we're not going to we're not going to monitor data for all of the 60 or 70 program goals, but we are going to monitor baseline and follow-up data for your priority goals, the small number of priority goals. Okay, so just a note, remember that the number of priority goals that a school can have, that you have the capacity to tackle as priority goals, is limited by your available resources. So let me say that one more time. The number of program goals, so you've got 60 or 70 program goals, the number of program goals that you have the capacity to tackle as priority goals that you're going to put a lot of time and energy into, that's limited by the available resources, especially time. So if you don't have a lot of time, if you're a counselor that's burdened with a lot of non-program activities, you may be only able to have one priority goal. On the other hand, if you don't have a lot of non-program activities, you might be able to have 3 or 4 priority goals that you're really going to hit in the coming year. Okay, so we are going to look at expanding resources again in your meeting with your council this year. And again, here are the resources that we think are key to being able to expand your time and your capability of dealing with more priority goals. Time is the big one, of course, and then ratio students per counselor, that certainly impacts your time. And then the other things that we can look at is, are there any additional guidance programs or student assistance programs in your school that you can tap into to help? Are there additional programs in your community that you can tap into to help deliver your guidance curriculum or your counseling initiatives? How much time do you have, space, technology, material, supplies? Do you have the ability to do professional development? What's your perception? If you don't have a good perception as a school counselor, that's going to impact your ability to deliver on those priority goals. And then how much funding is available. We'll look at that too, excluding personnel. Okay, so again, in this month there are 2 activities. The first part of the council meeting is going to be about expanding resources, and then we're going to say to the council, based on the resources that we anticipate being available, let's select a small number of program goals that will become our priority goals. Okay, wanted to talk about, when we're talking about resources, there's a couple of calculations that we want to make sure that you understand how to do. One is the ratio, how to come up with your counselor to ratio percentage or ratio, and then also how to calculate your per pupil expenditures. So there's a resource in your manual, let me open it up here, that talks about how to do that. So this is how to calculate how many positions you have in your building and then the ratio. We do this a little differently because we feel that a school counselor that's spending 90% of their time doing things that have nothing to do with school counseling, that truly is not a full-time school counselor. That would be a 1/10 time counselor. So here's just a little, just kind of a process page that will help you determine the the number of positions that you have in your building accurately based on the percentage of time that's spent doing school counseling, and then your ratio. So let's just walk through this real quickly. First thing you're going to do is you're going to write down everybody's, all your counselors' names in the first column, and then you're going to write down on paper what is the counselor's full-time equivalency. So let's say I'm in the building and I was hired on paper as a full-time school counselor. So I have a one full-time equivalency. If you're an elementary counselor that has maybe 2 days in one building and 2 days in another building, then you would be, for this building, you'd be at 2/5 at full-time equivalency, or that adds as a decimal, that would be 0.4. But let's say I'm a full-time, I'm a full-time counselor. So then for each counselor in column C, you're going to write down the percentage of time that that counselor spends performing program activities. In other words, everything but non-program. So where are you going to get that? Well, you've been doing time logs for all of your counselors since last spring to now. So in those time logs, you'll be able to calculate, the percentage of time that you do. So let's say in my time logs, I'm heavy into non-program. Let's say I'm only spending 30% of my time in non-program tasks. So then for my adjusted FTE, we want to just take the column C, the time percentage, and multiply it times my full-time equivalency. So in reality, I am not a full-time school counselor in this school. My adjusted FTE, when I multiply that out, is a 0.33. So that way, we can talk with your council about how, because of these non-program activities, we really don't have full-time counselors. Also, when we're starting to look at how many priority goals can we tackle, we really have to take into account that we do have a full-time counselor, but that counselor is not working as a full-time counselor. We really only have 1/3 of her time available. Okay, so that's how we're coming up with the adjusted FTE. And then you would just add all of your counselors' adjusted FTEs to, determine in reality how many counselors you have in the building doing counseling work. Then in step 2, you would write the total number of students. And then in step 3, you're just going to divide 2 by 1. So if I have, 1.3 full-time equivalency and, 700 students, I would just divide 700 by 1.3, and that lets me know how many students I have per counselor. The recommended ratio by the ASCA is 250 to 1, so that just kind of gives you an idea of how you compare to ASCA's recommendations. And then in terms of your annual budget, we're not including salaries and benefits, but we're just putting the, what your annual budget is in here. So if you are not given a budget, which to me, the math department gets a budget, the social study department probably has a budget. I always think it's nice when the school counselors have a budget and then they can determine how to spend those funds. But I know that in a lot of schools, rather than having a budget, the counselor has to go to the principal every time they want some money, and they're saying, could I have some money for this? Could I have some money for that? So if that's the case, if you can just estimate the average funds that have come into your school for the past several years and just put that down as your annual budget. And then the total number of students, and then you're just going to divide the total number of students by the funding amount, and then that will give you how much money per student you have available to support your program. We hear from a lot of schools that's like 50 cents, but it just helps the council to realize that you don't have a lot of funds. And also when you're talking with your council about this, a lot of times, like in my school, I think my total budget was $500, and which was not much when we divided it out per pupil. It was less than a $1 per student. But when we were talking about this with our council members, some of the businesses said to us, "Oh my gosh, $500 is nothing to our Fortune 500 company, and if that would double your budget, why don't we make a donation to help you with this project?" So that's, it's always good to let people understand, the resources, both time and funding, that are available. And so this is kind of instructions for how to calculate that. Okay, so that's how to calculate. Oops. And now let's do the meeting walkthrough. So I'm going to kind of fly through this. And here is the meeting. So, let's see, slideshow, current slide. Okay, so here's the meeting, and we're welcoming everybody. Here's the, today's agenda. We're going to review, then we're going to expand resources, then we're going to talk about priority goals. Here's the review. We've already talked about this, so in our intro. Okay, so we're reminding people that at these council meetings, there are always products that will happen after the discussion is held. We have two products already, our vision statement and our program goals. And I would suggest that you have a copy of the program goals, at least, if not both of those. But it would be, I would print out a copy of the program goals from the online system, and then make sure that everybody has a copy of that. And then you're telling folks, today we're going to come up with two products after today's discussion. We're going to have a resource expansion plan and then a list of our priority goals. And then in the future, we'll be looking at root causes for our priority goals and then activities to address those root causes. Okay, and then we're asking the council, do you have any questions? So this month's task, let's get down to business here, is looking at our resources, expanding our resources, and then updating our program goals. So we're reminding everyone that we have these program goals, and you could draw their attention to the copy that they have in front of them. And today we're going to come up with a subset that we'll call our priority goals. And these are the goals that we'll give extra attention to next year. And we're also going to monitor these goals. We'll have baseline data and follow-up data to see if the activities that we put in place next year actually are impacting those goals. Okay, and then reminding people that the number of program goals that we have the capacity to tackle as priority goals is limited by the available resources, which is why we want to spend time today talking about the resources we have available, knowing that if we can expand our resources, especially time, that we can tackle, the counselors can tackle more of those goals as priority goals. Okay, so two activities today. We're going to expand our resources, and then based on the resources that we anticipate being available, we're going to select a small number of program goals that will become our priority goals, that will really hit those next year. So first, let's look at expanding our resources. So here are the resources that impact our ability as counselors to be able to tackle priority goals, to be able to work with kids to help them make sound choices in those priority areas. First one is time, so we'll spend some time today looking at our time use and talking about how can we expand the amount of time that counselors have to work with kids and parents. We'll look at ratio, and then there's these other things too that impact our ability to deliver a counseling program. Do we have school-based resources like advisor-advisees or peer helpers, others that can help us deliver the guidance and counseling program? Do we have community resources that can help deliver components of the school counseling program? Do we have the space that we need, technology, materials, supplies? Do counselors have the ability to do professional development? Do the counselors have do students have a sound perception of school counselors? And do we have funding? So all of these things impact in some way counselors' ability to be able to deliver programming to students and parents. But the big one is time. You know, the more time the counselors have, the more programming that they can put in place. Okay, so let's just real quickly look at each of these. And so we're saying to the council, you know, let's look at these, and then we're going to ask you to prioritize which of these are important, and then which can we expand, and we'll brainstorm how can we expand some of these. So the first one is staff, and here is, you know, and you will have filled out this table. So here's a list of all of our counselors, on paper what our FTE is, and then based on a study that we did, the percentage of time that each of our counselors spends doing counseling tasks, and then an adjusted FTE. Because, you know, to be fair, when we're really looking at the amount of time counselors have to deliver a school counseling program, we need to make sure that we're, you know, looking accurately at the amount of time they have available. So we want to adjust that FTE to take out the percentage of time that counselors spend doing non-program tasks. So we added up all the adjusted FTEs, and, you know, down at the bottom you're saying we really have, you know, 2.7 FTEs or full-time school counselors to deliver our program. I would be ready here for the question, well, you know, if Sue is a full-time equivalency and she's only spending a third of her time working with kids and parents, what is she doing the rest of the time? You want to make sure that you're ready to answer that question. So I would print out ahead of time the list of non-program activities out of the online system, and I would even have copies of those, so you're ready to answer that question. You know, here it is. Here's all the non-program things that we do, and then you can go over, you know, we're in charge of book rental and substitute teaching and graduation and grade point averages and transcripts and master scheduling and, you know, all of those things. If people can see that list too, they'll start to think about, well, who else could do that stuff? Why is the counselor doing it? So I really would suggest to have that printed out list of all the non-program activities that you're doing. And then the other thing, the other reason why it's really important that you help them understand that what non-program things that you're doing is because if you don't help them understand that, they're going to wonder if you're just wasting your time. You know, if they see up there that Sue is a 1 FTE on paper, but adjusted, I'm only spending a third of my time with kids and parents doing school counseling stuff, they're going to wonder, is she reading the newspaper? Is she, you know, on Facebook? You know, what is she doing all the rest of this time? So you need to be able to answer that question. Okay, here's our ratio. And again, here's our total students, here's our total counselors with the adjusted FTE total. And then you've calculated and you've written the bottom, you know, your ratio on the bottom there. So we have 7,842 students for 1 counselor, or, you know, whatever it ends up being. You might want to work into the conversation there too that your national association recommends 1 to 250 in order for a school counselor to be able to implement the program well. Okay, does the school counseling support staff exist? So you're just either clicking X or clicking no, and if the answer is no, you can just move those little icons around and make sure you've answered that correctly. Non-program tasks, again, you could either, you know, pass out the piece of paper that has them listed, or you could just go to this screen and list the more major ones. Okay, time available. So we're talking to folks about how we first want to have the council tell us how they would like counselors to spend their time. So you know, they've already got that list of goals there, and so based on all those goals, how do they think you should spend your time? And this is the same activity that you did 3 years ago, where there's an Instagraph for non-program activity, program management, advocacy, counseling, and guidance. So the 5 different areas. And oops, let me go back. And just a reminder, let's look at this first one. You're giving everybody 5 sticky dots, or you're giving them markers, and just before they come up to the posted Instagraphs, you're asking them, okay, on scrap paper, write down the percentage of time that you would could pick for the school counselors to spend on guidance and on counseling and on advocacy. And I usually make a joke that the percentage of time cannot add up to be more than 100%. So, how would you split up that 100% between those 5 areas? Then after people have done that at their seats, they're coming up to these posters that you've put up on the wall, and I would walk up to the guidance poster, and if what I chose was 40%, I would either make an X on this bottom dot or I'd put my sticky dot there. And the next person up, if they also selected 40%, they would put their X or their sticky dot in the box above the one that I put it in. So you can see you're creating a bar graph here, and each of these pages will end up with a nice little bell curve, and then you can talk with the group about how, okay, the top of the bell curve on guidance was 40%, the top on counseling was 20%, and it always works out that that these percentages, for the most part, will add up to 100%. There may be one where maybe guidance ended up in between 40 and 45, and you were thinking 40, but to make it end up to 100, you're going to have to go 45. So you may have to tweak a little bit, but it'll be pretty clear. There will be a bell curve on each of these that kind of shows you where the council wants you to spend your time. Okay, so then in the next slide, you're saying, okay, that was where you wanted us to spend our time. We've been studying this, and here's our actual. Here's where we're spending our time, and there, you may be right on. But you may, be talking to folks about, let's talk about that. If you wanted us to spend 70% of our time guiding kids, teaching kids academic, career, and personal social information, and we're only at 30%, let's talk about how do we get more time to do that. So we really do have a time issue. Okay, then we're looking at budget. And again, our total budget is this, our total students is this. So here's our per pupil expenditure. You've put that in there. In terms of networking, our school counselors meet on a regular basis with, and you just check off the ones that, add in the people that you meet with on a regular basis for networking, which we think is very important for a school counselor. And then you're checking off the ones that you meet with. Community network. Other groups that we think it's very important that the school counselors have a network with. And then so who are you meeting with on a regular basis? And you've got lots of lines there that you can add in others. And then additional activities provided by teachers. So maybe you have a teacher advisor program or a teacher mentoring program. Maybe teachers are helping you with part of your program management. I doubt if your teachers are going to be providing counseling, although they may. If we look at mentoring as a level 1 personal social intervention, just friendly listening, you might, if you have a program where teachers do that, you might list that in the counseling area. So additional activities provided by community members. So again, you've talked and looked at what's happening in the community. So if your Boy Scout troop is working on a careers merit badge, you could write that up in guidance. The Boy Scouts, anybody that's involved in Boy Scouts is getting this. Or if your community has an academic and career mentoring program where students are involved in, you could list that. My guess is most of these extra activities provided both by the teachers and community members are going to fall in the guidance section. Okay, professional development. We're just listing national and state professional development opportunities, and then just checking the ones that you're going to. I would leave up the ones you're not going to as well, and I would certainly list all of them that are from your state, because part of the things we want folks to understand is that there is professional development for you, and you're not participating for whatever reason. Maybe a business on your council will say, "Man, would you like to go to that national conference? Let us send you there." So, or your community foundation might say, we have some funding for professional development. Would you like some? So I would leave the ones up that you're not attending as well. Okay, additional resources. I would just, these are the resources that we think counselors should have. So space, do you check off, do you have those things? Do you have the technology? Do you have materials, and you might list materials that you have or materials that you would like to have, and then check them off accordingly. And then supplies, oops, and then the perceptions of the school counselor. Okay, this data comes off of the survey that you gave last spring, or that some of you are giving this fall. Oh, that's another thing too. We are, if for some reason you didn't give the survey last spring, we are going to open up the survey this fall. It'll be open up the last 2 weeks in October. We're not going to publicize that. We're only telling the schools that have registered for our RSC workshops. But if you have not surveyed, talk to Debbie right away, and we'll make sure you have all the information that you need to survey at the end of October. One important thing is that when students survey this year, they have to pretend that it's last year. So if I'm an 8th grade student this year, I'm going to pretend that I'm a 7th grader and it's May, and I'm answering questions about what I did last year in terms of guidance and counseling. Okay, but in this report, remember that the students answer some questions about you, about your skills and your knowledge and your dispositions. You can just print out that report and just share that with people. And for some schools, that is the limiter. That that's the resource that they need in order to deliver a sound program, is their reputation. So you may decide that you want to do some work to improve that reputation. Okay. So let me go back and say one other thing. Remember, you may have a very sound school counseling program, but that's not your perception. We run into that all the time, because there may be a great program, but because you haven't been through RSC, or it's been a while since you've been through RSC, people are expecting you to be everything to everyone at a moment's notice. And when you're not, because you just don't have the capacity to be, then folks will start to say, well, what are they doing? They must not care about kids. They must not have time for kids. And so you may take some hits on this survey, even though you have a very sound school counseling program. If that happens, you need to kind of be thinking about, do I really not have a sound school counseling program and I have some issues there? Or do I have a perception problem? Either one, it needs to be, we think, addressed. Okay. So then we're looking at priorities. There's an Instagraph that lists all the main priorities or main resources down the side. And again, this time people are coming up. Remember, on any other Instagraph besides the time use one, however many resources are here, you're going to divide this number by 3. That's how many votes everybody gets. And so I would come up and I'd put my 3 X's or sticky dots in, and then the next person would come up. If they are voting for the same thing that I did, they'll put their little X next to mine. And then again, this will kind of create an Instagraph that will show you what resources people think are really important for you to build in order to be able to hit those priority goals. And then there's a resource expansion plan. This is just a brainstorm. So we're saying, okay, the very first resource that came up on that Instagraph was the resource of time, and you're writing that in here. And this is something that we are going to decide to work on for next year, and here's the action plan. So maybe a teacher is going to be assigned graduation to work on during their prep period. So there's just get real creative here. Who else is available to do these tasks, or how could you somehow get more time, or whatever the resource is, more funding or whatever. We've given you blanks up here where you can write in during the meeting the current, before the meeting you would have written in the current time use, and then during the meeting you write in the desired use from your Instagraphs that you did before. So that's about half the meeting, and then we want to come to priority goals. The given is that we've identified many choices that students must make in order to be successful in school and prepare for post-secondary. Our students, and then another given is that our students make some choices at a greater rate than others. And a third given is that we have limited resources. So the question is, which 1 to 3 student choices should take priority as we design our school counseling program for next year? So they are reviewing the student choice goals report from the last meeting that you've printed and you've given them copies of. And then we're just asking them to select 1 to 3 student choices that they think are, really important. And then we're asking them to have this discussion. Again, given the degree to which students are already making sound choices and the amount of time and funding available, first question is, how many priority choices should we tackle? So everybody has their own personal sheets where they've checked off the choices that they think should be priority choices. And now we're saying to people, okay, how many choices do you think we should tackle? 1, 2, 3? And then finally, which choices should be priority? So these are just kind of informal discussions. Let me show you, whoops, let me go back here. Let me show you, I want to go to the online system real quickly. So you can see in the manual, in your handouts for this month, here is, I want you to see what these priority goals look like. And there we go. So this is what the report looks like. It has this is for demo school, so I haven't written them all in, but there'll be 60 or 70 choices listed here. The grade level that you want to make that choice, which students, in most cases probably going to be all students. And then if it is a choice, one of the suggested choices, you're going to have survey data. So as people are going through, they're looking through this report and they're thinking, oh, discuss their future plans with their counselor. Only 50% of the kids said that they're doing that. That's really problematic. So they'll check that. So they're looking for 3 things to check. And then when you get to this part of the discussion, you're asking them, how many priority choices do you think we should tackle, given how much time and energy and funding and everything else we have? And then if they say 2 or 1, then and please make sure to tell them that you were advised that 1 is fine. We want you to do these really well. And then once you have the number, then what choice should it be? Okay, then the final part is establishing the choice priority data targets. So just some examples. These are choices like student group might be kindergartners have fewer than 10 absences per year. Current data is 87. What we want to know is what should the target data be. So we might climb from 87, do it as a target to 95. So there's some elementary examples, some middle school examples, and again, if you are a middle school, you might want to take out those 2 slides for the elementary and then the high school examples. So it's okay to have data target be 100%, and having a 4-year high school course plan, that's something we would hope that all kids in the building had. So if it's only 70%, it's fine to go to 100%. Okay, so some tips on the data targets as you're setting those with your council. We want to make them challenging but reachable. And then also to remember that lots of people can implement activities to reach those targets. It's not just the school counselors. It may be parents. It may be the teachers, community organizations, the PTO. It could be lots of different organizations that are focusing on helping kids make that one choice or those 2 choices. Okay, and then finally, you've written in your priority goals here, and then you're asking the council to help you come up with the data targets. Okay, and then the final thing is, given the resources available, including time, do we have the capacity for implementing the activities that will address each of our priority goals? And if the answer is no, you think as a counselor, you're thinking, whoa, I just don't have enough time to do that, or I don't have enough funding to do that, then this is a place where you really need to speak up, and just tell people, I don't think I can do all of that. I don't think I can hit 6 priority goals. So you have a choice then. You can say to the council, we're going to need to get some more resources. If you want me to do those things, then somebody's got to step up and take more of those non-program activities away. Or you may say, if nobody will step up, then you'll say, realistically, I can't have 6 priority goals. It needs to be, 2. or whatever. So this is a capacity check, and it's a place where you need, as a counselor, to speak up. The worst thing that could happen is your counselor takes you beyond capacity. You're not going to be able to do a good job, and then later when we do the follow-up data, you're not going to have good results, and it's just not going to be a good situation. So don't allow yourself here to go beyond capacity. It's really key here that you speak up. Okay, so that's the capacity check. And then we're just looking ahead that the next month we're going to be talking about why kids aren't making choices in those priority areas. And then the meeting after that, we'll talk about what to do about it. What do we need to change so that kids do start to make good choices in those areas. And then questions, and then that's it. So, okay, let me go back to our PowerPoint just on the training, just a few more things to do here. Let me first of all see if anybody has any questions. Okay, again, if not right now, please feel free to call Debbie, and we can look at that later. Okay, this month's submissions. One is the resource expansion action plan. So, and then the rubric items are the action plan includes activities designed to gain resources for the school counseling program, and that the target data or the situation is included. So, we want to get, we want to get rid of enough non-program activities so that Sue's FTE goes from 0.33 to 0.5, or whatever. So, but we're putting target data in for each of the resources that we're trying to expand. On your priority goals, the only rubric item is that one or more priority goals have been identified. And then the council minutes are the same as always. Don't forget to put the names of those present and the groups they represent into the minutes, and then also to quote some people, not all of them, but a few people that have made contributions to the discussion. Okay, I ask for questions again. And if not, let's very quickly look to the online system. So again, I'm logged in as Demo School. So here are the handouts for this meeting, and then the tools that the meeting facilitator needs, the prep for the meeting, the facilitator notes, the resource calculation instructions that we went through. Here's the Instagraphs and the resource expansion action plan that we looked at. There's that poster, and then what to do after the meeting. So everything that we looked at today, it's in the tools section of the manual. Okay, so if I go to the process page, I'm going to scroll down to October, and here I am with update your resources and priority goals. So the webinar that we're recording right now will be linked here on the process page. I'm sorry, the second one linked in step 2 of the process page. Since we are adding up and using your council time use logs this month, this would also be a good time for you to upload the time use logs as evidence of your school individual counselor calendars. There is an uploader button here where you will upload the time use logs for each of your counselors. And remember that the counselors need to show time use logs for the first semester and the second semester. That's an Ask a Ramp and a Gold Star requirement. Also, when you go to upload, there will you can only upload one document. So if you have 3 counselors and you've got a first semester and second semester calendar for each time log for each counselor, that would be 3 times 6. You've got 6 pieces of paper, and you can only upload one thing. So what we suggest you do is to scan those into one document, scan all 6 time use logs into one document, and then upload those. On editing the counselor time use percentages, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. This actually, when you open up yours, there will be numbers in here. When you gave the survey last spring, you were asked to estimate these numbers. And what we'd like you to do now is that now that you have your time use studies, you can put in numbers based on your actual study. And up here where it says, are these percentages based on time use log, you'll want to say yes. Okay. Then also on the bottom part of this, we'd like you to update the student opportunities. So these are all the opportunities that a sound school counseling program traditionally will provide. And then so you're asked to just estimate what percentage of students have this opportunity while they're enrolled in your school. And then who provides the opportunities? Is it school? Is it a group other than a school? Or is the opportunity not provided, or you're not sure? Okay, so we're updating that page. Let me go back to the process page, then we'll wrap up. Okay, then you're conducting Advisory Council Meeting 3. This will, another way to get to the manual to get all the resources for that. You're going to upload the action plan, and notice that you have another uploader button. So you're going to create this document using a Word document, save it to your computer, and then upload it, and then you'll be able to, on all these, you'll be able to hit the report button and see it. You're going to review the program goals report. We just put that in as a step to make sure that you've done that before you get to your meeting, and also to make sure that you know where to find it. There's another link to it here. Then you're going to enter your priority goals, and so this is just going to click there, and you're going to, you can either review the goals report, you can select priority goals, or enter priority data. So if I click on this, here are all of my goals from the previous month, and then I'm just selecting the ones that are priority goals. Then the other thing, don't forget you want to put data into those priority goals. So I'm going to click enter. This time I have been having trouble with my computer. I uploaded a new program, or downloaded a new program a couple days ago, and at any rate, when you click on that, it'll give you a screen where you're able to enter data into your priority goals. Okay. Actually, see, it's spinning. It's just not opening that for some reason. I hope I can get back to the process page. Good, I can. Okay, so we're entering our priority goals. Enter your minutes. Send your submission to Debbie. Here's the link on how to do that. But before doing that, don't forget to review the rubric item. Okay, and I think that's it. Let me see, does anybody have any questions? If so, jump in. Okay. Not seeing any questions. So I think that takes us then. We did the online system, no questions. Okay, so that finishes up this month. We will archive this, so if you're a few meetings behind, don't forget that you can go to the process page and watch the archived version if you need a reminder. And we always like to end with, don't forget that as a school counselor, you make a difference in the lives of young people. Thank you so much. Don't forget to call Debbie if you have a question. Thanks.